course, is what am I designing? On the surface, it seems like there'd be a fairly straightforward answer to this, but as we will discuss in this video, this question tends to multiply and generate quite a number of follow-ups. So, to help us get our design started, we need to actually break down this question and split it into 3 more specific sub-questions. This will help us work a bit more deliberately towards something that feels unique instead of underwhelming or generic. So let's break down what these questions exactly are. So first of all, we need to know what the story or the history is of our design. So that means, is it fictional or is it maybe a bit more historically based? Is it realistic or is there a fantasy aspect to this design? What is the setting in time and space and what are the rules of the world? So basically we want to expand upon the story of the world that our design is living in. For example, if we design a house, we need to know who lives there, how long have they been living there, how well maintained is the house, and so on. These are all variables that can come into account when we're designing something and we want to be prepared to include them in our designs themselves. So that means we just need a couple of variables to get a good starting point to get our creativity going so that our designs become unique, like I've mentioned earlier. Secondly, we need to specify the purpose of our design. So when I'm talking about the purpose, this is anything from the function, so what our design is actually meant to do, to the utility versus the aesthetics, like which one of these has to take the lead in our design, or the adaptability. Does our design need to stand out or does it need to blend in into our world? So if I say design a house, is that house just a home or is it also a shop, a farm, or a blacksmith? Function is something that has to shine through because a lot of our decision making is going to have to be based on the function that we decide early on. Now, the balance between function and design is something that we will discuss later during the course, so that's something that I'm definitely going to call back to later in this course. And the final thing that we need to specify is going to be the feeling. When we're designing something, it's all about conveying a certain message. So we want to create a certain emotional resonance with our designs, and we want to make clear what the vibe or the atmosphere of our design is meant to be. So for example, does this house feel safe? Or is it maybe a little bit shady? Does it seem like there's a poor person living there? Or maybe it's actually a bit more fancy. Design is all about combining appeal and beauty with functionality, so we're gonna try to work towards a certain balance to get this result done. After we've defined the history and the story, the purpose and the feeling of our design, we really have a very good foundation of where we want to take our design. That's really a good starting point to start designing, because now we have a clear idea of where our design is supposed to be headed. For example, if I were to tell you to draw a house, many would draw something like this, but drawing and designing isn't necessarily the same thing. A drawing can be a design, but not necessarily. So with design, we want to tell a story and convey a feeling. We just use drawing as our medium to tell that story. Keeping this in mind, is a brief that states just design a house enough? No, of course not. I don't know if the client wants a small house or a big house, a fancy house or a crappy house, or if it needs to be in the city or on the farmlands. I could go on, but I think my point overall is clear on this. An open brief like this is often one of the main culprits in a mediocre design, and it can very easily lead to fear of the blank canvas as well, because if an artist doesn't know where to begin, he often doesn't begin at all. Designing with too vague a prompt eliminates the possibility of iterating, and it will take you a lot longer to find a design that you are overall happy with. Because if you have too vague of a brief, what will end up happening is that instead of making 12 iterations on one design, you'll end up doing one iteration on 12 different designs. So what do? I start being more specific. By being more specific, we can really zoom in on one particular aspect of our design and really use our creativity to come up with something unique and believable. For example, if the brief states, design a Western wizard gunslinger home, I have a much more clear idea on where I want to take my thumbnails instead of just design a house. So after we've defined these 3 points, the final thing that we need to know is how we are going to go about creating it. So at the start of your project, decide the style that you're going to create something in. Is it going to be more realistic or is it going to be more stylized? Are you going to use 3D in your workflow, or is it just going to be 2D? If so, will I paint it, or will I use line art and flat colors? This final step will be particularly important when you are creating a larger project with multiple designs, because we'll need to keep consistency throughout these designs, which means that we will very clearly have to specify what it is that we're creating and how we are going to go about it. That consistency is really what's going to sell your project as a nice portfolio project. So really try to create a little bit of a style sheet that pinpoints what it is that you're going for, and always compare with the previous designs that you've made to see if everything still blends together quite nicely. All of this is just to make sure that we provide ourselves with a roadmap that keeps us on track while managing a larger project. Of course, in a job, the most of the defining will be done for you, but when you're creating a large-scale portfolio project, thinking about the world outside of your designs is going to be a very valuable trait.